It's Mark and Pete.
Hello and welcome to the show, more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete, the show dedicated to religion, politics and business. This week's colourful conversation is Jesus Christ, the ultimate entrepreneur. Well, that's a provocative statement, and is it true? Well, many people would say that it is, partly for the fact that many entrepreneurs show great vision, faith in their conviction, persuasiveness, and have ultimate sacrifice for their service and cause. Now, with me today is clergyman Pete. So, Pete, do you believe that Jesus possessed the entrepreneurial skills to spread the word of God?
Well, businessman Mark, yes, I think that Jesus is an example of an entrepreneur who, through his dedication, through his selflessness, was able to create something, create an organization, to get his message out, to have such a success in a startup that not only was it explosive in growth at the time, but it's still in existence today. So the use of the term ultimate entrepreneur is absolutely right. What sort of business do you see that is still around 2,000 years later? Not many. So I think in that way, it's true that you can look at Jesus and see that he was an entrepreneur. Of course, it's a little bit cheeky because he wasn't a businessman in the sense that we mean today. But we can still, take this idea, I think, and run with it and say, look, what traits did Jesus have? What methods of working did he have that we can learn from today and compare them with what successful entrepreneurs do today, and just see, what is the God way of doing business that's going to give us success when we're starting out.
Yes, and it's true to say that although that this is a provocative positioning, and you're right, that Jesus Christ wasn't selling a product as such, but he was trying to sell an ideology. And many people who are in business have this enterprise about them. They typically have initiative, and they sometimes, are quite happy to go and take risk. You could argue that that's exactly what Jesus Christ had to do. He was very much against the grain, and people didn't always understand what he was trying to do. They were practicing things in a different way. He had a particular philosophy, and he was trying to sell that idea and promote the word of God. So what I'd like to do is just explore a little bit more about what it is to be an entrepreneur. So I'm going to set it up by talking about this poem, and it's called The Bug. With great entrepreneurs, inspiration occurs. Trailblazers are ones that the inventors and investors prefers. They move at speed in quest to succeed and sell you goods you never need. A key characteristic is being optimistic. A great vision. They are futuristic. When things go right, they are materialistic. But when things go wrong, they go ballistic. They see a business differential as potential, and make profit is quite essential. Their personas all have great self-reliance, competing hard in true defiance. With thinking caps, they see the market gaps, develop a business with strong roadmaps, create commercial models they mollycoddle. As triumphs are a doddle, failure is twaddle. You cannot deter the entrepreneur. Life is one big commercial blur. Their lives are fierce and sometimes brisk, spirited ventures with every risk. Captains of commerce are a different class. Let's celebrate and raise a glass. But if you catch the business bug, beware the stakes or be a mug.
Yes. Well, I mean, you've got to beware the stakes. I think that Jesus might have had something to say about that. I think now just looking at Jesus and how he how he set up his stall an entrepreneur. Well, he started out his ministry by sort of doing market research, in that he went around the towns in Cana in Galilee and went and met people in the smaller towns and villages around, telling them his message. So he started out doing that. And then once he'd done that, he set about gathering together his workforce, who were going to be trained and commissioned to do the work that he needed doing. Now, one of the places this is set out is in Luke chapter 10, beginning right at the start of the chapter. And that tells the story of how Jesus commissioned 72, or in some versions it says 70. Anyway, this group of people who went out in pairs to cover the area, taking his message, following his directions. So they're doing the work that he'd been doing, but he wasn't going with them. He was sending them out with a method, with the same message, so I guess with the same product, you could say, and he gave them what he wanted them to do. But then he then met them when they come back and gave them feedback, got their story about what had happened, had a report, and then he gave them feedback. And when he had done this, he then gave them a sort of a vision for the future. He could see what he wanted to happen, and he got across to them, this is what I want to see. You can do it. Here are the tools to do it. And when they came out, this is an interesting insight into the way that Jesus dealt with people. When Jesus came back and he heard what they'd been doing and heard the successes that they'd had, he rejoiced with them. It says this, at that very moment, this is verse 21 of Luke chapter 10, at that very moment, Jesus overflowed with joy. So he celebrated their success. So the passion was there. We think of Jesus' passion as Jesus suffering, and he certainly was prepared to suffer. And that's true of an entrepreneur. You need to be able to work hard and to take the suffering. But here we see Jesus rejoicing with the people from the business, using as an example of business, or from the mission that he'd set up. And he rejoices so much, he's overflowing with joy. And that sort of passion, that attractive persona who rejoices in other people's success, is perhaps the classic model of an entrepreneur. Someone who casts a vision, who can come up with a method, a way of working to fulfill that mission, can train and persuade others that this is something that is good to attain, and then rejoice and celebrate with them, so that going on to the next level, he has imbibed his passion and his vision to them, with not just with information, but with the passion and enthusiasm that he had shared with other people. That's, I think, where Jesus is the ultimate entrepreneur, in that he was able to so inculcate not only his information and methods, but his joy and love for the mission and message that he was trying to get across, that other people caught it too.
Yes. Well, I think that one of the things that is important there is this point about passion, because clearly he was prepared to put himself at risk and to pursue that message. Now, it's important to bring this up, because many entrepreneurs over the years, and in fact those entrepreneurs that we know today, still possess those similar skills. So, for example, when we look at people on a global standing who are well respected in business, people like Donald Trump, Alan Sugar from the UK, and of course Richard Branson from the UK, and of course there are many other ones. Warren Buffett, for example, is well known for his ability to spot a market gap and and really have a business model that is very robust, very solid, and can really spot the difference where there are weaknesses in a market and capitalize on something, and with a good idea and with a good product or service that you can prosper. Also, I think that the other thing is very important about this message that we on the Mark and Pete show have been talking about. They recognize the advantage of achieving short, medium, and long term.
Yeah.
They do not put everything at risk for short-term gain. Now, it's interesting about what does make an entrepreneur, because I'm going to refer a quote that was actually from Richard Branson in the Entrepreneur magazine. And what he says, I think, does again sort of highlight the thoughts of an industry leader. And he said, what makes the difference is fearlessness. The best businesses offer a product or service that has never previously been available. While you can almost always conduct research and test the marketplace before any launch, an entrepreneur will be, to some extent, jumping into the unknown, as the very nature of a new product means you're venturing into new territory. So this combination of identifying a gap, developing your product, but taking risk. So I think that that's quite fundamental, and that's for somebody who's recognized for tapping into many different markets and succeeding on a global scale.
Yes, and I think this is where Jesus, as the example of the entrepreneur, really fits well, in that what Jesus was doing was taking an existing and well-known religious and faith scenario in Judaism, in which you had the people of Israel having a belief in God that they saw as being unassailable, that this was absolutely true, taking it and giving it a twist, spotting gaps, seeing something that they hadn't noticed. Now, of course, as Christians, we're going to say, well, of course he would know that, because he was actually, in his very nature, the God that they were talking about. But, yeah, that's true. But just looking at how that worked itself out in the way that Jesus operated, we can see that he saw what needed to change. He saw gaps in the way that they were living out their religious conviction, and put into place not only the solution, but the vision for how that would then look, what that will then look like years down the line. So yes, he was problem solving, which you were just highlighted. There's a gap, or there's something that's not been addressed in the market. In this case, in the religious market, I guess. But not only that, he saw how that could be worked out, solved, and how that would look in the future. What would that actually look like? Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So I think that's this vision of the future, and this faith, belief that something is going to happen in the future, and you can actually see it. So faith and vision together is a Christian attribute. So we can say, look, an entrepreneur must be like this: someone who can see how things can work out, so that they can cast their vision for the future, so that others can see it. If they can't see it themselves, they're never going to be successful. So this ability to have a vision for the future and then put into action steps that are going to lead to it, well, that's something that Jesus certainly worked out. And we can say that he was very long term in his views. I mean, I think it's 2,000 years and counting. So he was certainly long term. He was able to put into place really hard work and sacrifice for the sake of long-term goals.
Yes. Well, I think what we would say in business is that he had a sustainable business model there. Clearly, it was something that was, yes, a risk at the beginning, but clearly, whilst it had competition. While it certainly had some challenges, he managed to prove a point and continues to prove that point. One of the things I wanted to mention, as I sort of raised in the poem, is that the fact that often entrepreneurs see things in very sort of different light. So some are those who focus purely on the short term, as we mentioned before, and others on the long term. But Forbes, the financial media company, actually sort of jokingly sort of put a question of to general businessmen: do you suffer from entrepreneurialism? And the way that they shaped it was quite interesting, because essentially the way they put it was almost like entrepreneur's disease, ED as they described. And it's sometimes poorly understood, sometimes even a life-altering condition, which sort of affects millions of people across the globe. But they sort of broke it into 5 categories. And they were saying that the first one was ownership. Effectively, if you treat even the most menial tasks to your manager, it gives you this sense as if you have the fear of fate of the free world depends on your completing it perfectly, that you've got to take ownership, etc. Circumspection. Contrary to popular belief, sufferers of this disease, i.e. entrepreneurialism, basically aren't necessarily risk takers, but they are people who look at fact, and they are sometimes, based upon fact, can be cautious. One thing which I thought was more important was the tweaking category, and that was to basically take what is often seen as an existing problem and adjusting it, improving it. So this concept that you've already taken somebody's idea, but what you've done is you've developed it. And many people have taken ideas like that and through the course of history, and they've modernized it. Positivity, I think we've talked about that, which clearly is that they have a positive outlook on life. And this other point is about being overworked. Now, there are many people who are probably listening to this who probably think, yes, I'm well overworked at work and probably doing far more hours than they need to do. But interestingly, if you suffer from that, listener, yes, it's possible that you could be suffering from entrepreneurialism.
Yes.
So have you really got the bug? So to my point earlier, I mean, well, you have to be careful, because if you have the business bug, beware the stakes. You could be a mug.
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting that not everyone's an entrepreneur. I mean, entrepreneur is someone who starts something, who, as you were saying, that has these characteristics that they feel responsible for the job that they do, even if they're working for someone else, and they want to see things solved, see things actually done. And not everyone's like that. In fact, the majority of people aren't, I would say. So just like not everyone's a leader, you can notice that amongst people. There are very few people who are actually in their character suited for leadership.
Yes.
You know, we can all aspire to have traits of leadership. In trying to have integrity, trying to make sure that we live in such a way that if people follow us, that's a good thing. But to actually be a leader, to take on the responsibility of leadership in a company or in a church or whatever situation, very few people actually have that. I mean, people say, less than 10%, but whatever the percentage, it's only a few people. But those who want to be leaders and entrepreneurs, so leaders who start up new things, that's even fewer. That's a percentage of a small percentage. So we're talking about people who are necessary for the health of our economy, but there's very few of them. So we really need to encourage them. And I suppose that's part of our motivation for this episode of Mark and Pete, to encourage those people who are Christians in business, or who perhaps have felt, no, well, is it really something that I should be getting into business or starting a business as a Christian? Isn't that a bit materialistic? Is the motivation wrong? And really, it's important to see through that as being a misrepresentation of what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur A leader is a leader who can start up something, solve a problem that is really there in a market. So the product they're looking at creating is really genuinely needed. Spotting it, producing the product, and seeing it through such that there's a successful business producing it. And then I suppose for many entrepreneurs, then moving on. But
Yes.
they start because they're the entrepreneurs that do it. So we need people like that. And Jesus, you were talking about tweaking earlier. He more than tweaked, but he took the law of God, which was very successful at producing a country which could withstand the might of far bigger countries, very effective. He took the law, but he didn't abandon it, didn't throw it away, the law. What he did was he changed how it was to be used. So he transformed something. He took something existing, transformed it such that instead of just being effective for one country in the Middle East, ancient Israel, because it would now be written on the hearts of everyone through the actions that he took and through the gospel message, which meant that people were filled with God's Spirit, the law of God would now be written on people's hearts. So therefore, it was effective for everyone. So he took an existing, reasonably successful model, or business model, as we were talking about, tweaked it, changed it, such that now it was far more effective. And if you're the sort of person who can do that, if you have the characteristics of that disease that Mark was just talking about, then we need you. You are needed in our societies. We're certainly needed in Britain, where we're based, but wherever you are, you're needed for the good of the economy.
Well, I think that that's another important point, because one of the reasons for setting up this particular theme for today's show is that there is a dearth of good entrepreneurs coming through, not just in Britain, incidentally, and that does apply to America and Europe and Asia and so on. And there's a very important reason for that, is that established entrepreneurs that we've sort of referenced before, and of course there are thousands across the world, that's all well and good, but unfortunately there is a major skill set shortage in industry, and not just in manufacturing or engineering. It's across the board. And what that means is that you don't necessarily need to be an entrepreneur to own the business. You can be entrepreneurial in your contribution to the business. And what I mean by that is that often when people clock on, or that they turn up for work at a given point in the day and the week, they will do their job. But often what businesses require is people to think entrepreneurially as well. And that's really important to make that differential. Yes, we want people to set up businesses. We want innovation. There's no doubt about that. But with everybody having different skill sets, we can encourage people to think in a different way, because quite simply, the real true entrepreneurs are positive realists. You don't get a successful pessimist who really is an entrepreneur, and that really sort of touches on almost all types of industries. So I think it's important to emphasize that entrepreneurialism isn't about simply going down to a registered office to set up a specific business, although clearly some people can do that. It's being entrepreneurial in the context of the society we have today. And the other thing I want to mention as well, which is really where we sort of draw the real traits of Jesus, and that is integrity. That is crucial, because if we look at the values that what Jesus Christ was trying to say, not just about the principles and the Word of God, but about the integrity of how you deal with people, how you are as a person. And that's certainly something that, as we've seen in recent times through scandals in banks and insurance and many other industries, where perhaps it could be argued that people haven't really conducted themselves in an honourable way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this is essential. The importance of integrity, the importance of honesty, the importance of being able to be trusted, that you are able to be trusted, is so essential for entrepreneurs that it's so essential that it's overlooked. It's one of those things that are at base level. You must have it, because without that, business doesn't really work. Now, it could be that one entrepreneur or a few entrepreneurs could be successful by lying and cheating. They personally could make a lot of money and then say thank you very much and go to the bank. Long term, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to continue with their success because of people then not being able to trust them. But as an economy, if there were too many like that, the whole deck of cards is going to come tumbling down. And I would say not only is that something that could happen, I would say that's something that is happening.
Yeah.
As we see too much dishonesty, too much grasping at profits that are not due to the work that you've done, but rather due to, I don't know, some sort of scam, of seeing that if you lied, you could make a fast buck, rather than going for the business model that is not only going to make you money, but is going to be a win-win situation, such that the product is good, you make profits from it, which is the ideal situation. That's how it should be. In the Bible it says that a worker deserves his wages. Now, it's not quite talking about businessmen in that situation. It's talking about ministers of the gospel. But the principle holds that yes, seeking after earning money from your business venture is a good thing, and producing good products is a good thing. But if you're going to be cheating, not only is it bad for your personal integrity, it's bad for the economy. You're not going to have a successful free market economy. You're not going to be successful in creating wealth through business setups and startups and this sort of thing, if there's no assumption that when you make a deal, you're going to honor it, that when you say you're going to pay, you will, that when you say a product is good, it is. This sort of thing is essential to have a successful trading economy.
Yes, and I think that the other thing to add to that is that entrepreneurs, whilst that they clearly want to make profit and make money, that's important. But actually, entrepreneurs don't always just want to make money. What they want to do is they want to contribute. They want to be able to provide for a society. So something that it is sustainable, that has a legacy. And I think that that really means that they are prepared to sometimes sacrifice the short-term gain, where perhaps, as you've alluded to, that some entrepreneurs in today's society perhaps are prepared to even put a company at risk, take a gamble perhaps, which is very costly in many ways. Whereas true entrepreneurs, the real ones that have integrity, will be looking at other aspects, that they are a little bit more philanthropic, that they're prepared to give. And that can come in different forms. So I think it's not just about being an entrepreneur and making lots of money. It's about contributing to society and providing an opportunity for many other people to build a community. And we talk about, particularly on Mark and Pete, about building local community. And that's what we would also encourage, that whilst we want new people to come in and be entrepreneurial, is to build infrastructure and build for a better society.
Yes, we've touched on this in a previous episode as we looked at businesses giving and businesses contributing to charities. We'll put a link to that episode in the show notes. It goes further than that, I would say, that a good, successful business contributes so much to the society in which it is situated that it can transform the whole of an area in which it's situated. Of course, with a larger business, it can transform the whole of a country. If you have a company that is forward-looking, that is producing a product that is useful to people, and then producing profits, then those profits are reinvested into the company, into the local area. Some of it's given away to charitable needs in the area and abroad, and people are being trained up within that business to have a successful career. It's win, 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 win. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have new successful businesses starting. And we need to just encourage people to, if you've got an idea for a new business, start looking into how you can start up that new business. Don't shelve it. Don't write it down and put it in a drawer. Get on with it. Look into how you can be an entrepreneur. If you've got that idea, it may be that you're the next big entrepreneur.
Yes, and so listener, we encourage you to tell us your story. Have you had a good idea? Have you started up a business? Have you developed a business? I think it's fair to say that we can conclude that Jesus had a particular goal. He spread his message. He certainly had a scalable model. And we would certainly encourage you to certainly look at the important traits and characteristics that Jesus Christ not only developed when 2,000 years ago, as Pete said, certainly added a lot of value. It's relevant today. So, join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.